Hello everyone, this is Painting of the Week. Those architecture videos that I was talking about a couple weeks ago are on hold until I can get some better software. But this is a painting that has been requested a couple times actually by, let's see if I can find the name here, DefJam170, YouTube user. So this is a painting from the early 1880s, the Procession in Kursk province by the Russian realist painter Ilya Repin. And give you a little bit of the religious background that forms the context for this painting. We have the icon of the Lady of Kursk, which is a Theotokos. So Theotokos is a Greek word for the Virgin Mary. This particular icon, and an icon is like a religious image, is what we call a Theotokos of the sign, which is a particular type of icon where Mary has her hands raised in such a way that we can see an image of Jesus, the baby Jesus, on her chest. And the Our Lady of Kursk, or the Kursk root icon, was a particular Theotokos of the sign that was discovered in a forest outside Kursk in the 1300s, I believe. And Kursk is a Russian city that's south of Moscow. It's about 100 miles north of the border with Ukraine. So this image of the Virgin Mary, this Kursk root icon, became a town-protecting Marian icon, or sort of an image of Mary that was thought to be protective of the city of Kursk, and it was transported annually from the abbey that was built on the site of its discovery into the actual town of Kursk proper during Easter time. And that's the religious procession, the scene that is depicted here. And we see people from all different walks of society, from beggars and peasants to the police officers and military, the wealthy and the aristocratic, and that's going to become more important later on when we talk about the realist style in which this particular painting is based. So the actual case that is containing the icon is of course located right over here, and it's on this platform that's being carried by these peasant men. And you can't actually see the icon here in the case. We can kind of look through the window here, but what we're really getting just a glimpse of is the gold casing along the actual, that kind of protects the icon itself. That's called a riza, which I believe is a Russian word that means like a cloak or a robe. And all we're seeing here is the light is reflecting off of that elaborate golden case right there. In terms of stylistic techniques, we see an excellent example of atmospheric perspective, particularly being employed here in the background with the kind of dust that gives the painting a real sense of depth. Also notice along here that this landscape has been completely cleared of vegetation. We can see that a lot of different trees have been cut down, and I would be interested to hear maybe in the comments section why people think that is, or if people think that that's important in this particular painting. In the front of the crowd here, we see a very well-dressed woman who's holding her own icon, so this would be an example of someone from the upper class. And what I think is somewhat hilarious here, I was reading about this on a few different websites, is that these two women here, who are definitely, not aristocratic women, these are more peasant women, are holding this case, which presumably is the case that belongs to the icon here that the wealthier woman is carrying. But what's funny is that the two servant women seem to be carrying this case with as much reverence, as much deliberateness as the actual icon itself, as if the case were this very holy object, even though the icon itself isn't even inside of the case. The people in general here seem to be fairly agitated with their surroundings. And note especially here this peasant man who's trying to restrain this crippled boy here with his staff. We get the sense that people feel kind of forced to be here or compelled to participate in this procession, but they'd rather do it by themselves or just with their friends, as opposed to this kind of amalgamation of all these different people from different aspects and parts of societies. Many of the officers in this painting are beating back some of the more zealous peasants with their riding crops, like we see right here. And of course, they're all very stately. They're positioned on their horses. Some of them appear to be yelling at members within the crowd. So we get a sense of abuse of power here among authority figures. Wealthier individuals in general are following directly behind the icon. Most notably, it would be this very self-absorbed priest who's decked out in these golden vestments, and he's got his incense censer there, and he's brushing back his hair. I don't know if you can see it, but he's brushing back his hair with his left hand. Once again, this idea of this sort of self-absorption of the upper class, particularly in this case also the corruption of the church leaders. So what we're getting a sense here is that Repin is really creating a critical commentary on the established social order in Russia at this point in time. Notice that the man, one of the men who's carrying the platform here that contains the icon, appears to be drunk. We don't really get a sense of this very profound piety from this procession as much as we do a glimpse in the sense of a lot of different personalities and socioeconomic backgrounds. So what we're left with is basically a portrait of the de facto Russian social caste system as seen through the eyes of a nationalist realist painter. And we've discussed realism before, particularly in the context of Gustave Courbet. Realism is a very progressive movement. It suggests and highlights disparities in socioeconomics that painters like Repin believed needed to be addressed more thoroughly. And that's why paintings of this style, and Repin in particular, obtained kind of a cult following later on in the Soviet Union, in that Russian or Soviet art they believed really needed to be just like this. And they actually outlined criteria for what socialist artwork should look like in the Soviet Union. It had to be proletarian, that is, that it had to be relevant to the struggles of the workers and understandable to the working class. It had to be typical in that it depicted scenes that we would see commonly in our everyday experiences. It had to be realistic in that it represented the working class in a realistic manner, and it also had to be partisan. It had to be politically supportive of the aims of the Soviet Union. So what we see here is an example of how the social realism of painters like Repin is beginning to form the foundation for socialist realism that would continue to develop in Russia in the years to come.